Lots of pain. That's what
It's
I
just
feel.
game one. It's just
It's
one game.
I'm feeling the pain right now coming to you. I thought to myself, all right, when we recorded the pre-opening night preview talking about the what that game would look like, and I will say right at the top, we expressed concerns, Matt. We said that this wasn't an ideal matchup for the Bulls. We said that there's a lot of things that OKC does well, especially defensively, that could make what the Bulls want to do well on offense hard, and that's what happened. But I thought we'd come on this show and we would be able to talk about not necessarily a win, but a stiff battle, a game that had a lot of positives, more positives than negatives potentially, and instead, to no surprise, to no surprise, in year three, the drama carried over. You don't change the roster
Hmm.
that much. What happens? Well, some of the drama sticks around, and the outcome doesn't change that much. So that's where we're at. Bulls lose 124 to 104 last night against the Oklahoma City Thunder, at their home opener, the season opener. And it wasn't just bad. It got all kinds of ugly. The fourth quarter really got away from them. The game was really tight
The
there up
fourth quarter
until
is when it got ugly. The first three
end of the
quarters were
third.
not
Yeah,
awful. End of the whatever. But like that's kind of when I feel like it started to get ugly.
the wheels fell
And
off then.
the
Yes.
wheels fell off a little bit and the Bulls weren't hitting shots. Like we also, like you said it right off the top, we talked outside of the Bulls, we probably talked more about the Thunder on this podcast leading up to the season than any other team.
Yeah.
It cannot as many problems as the Bulls had last night. I do think we have to stress the Thunder looked very good. They played very good, and
Sure.
Shea
Yeah.
Gilgeous-Alexander is very good.
Well,
Like
that's the
that guy
thing.
was
Yeah.
fantastic last night.
A-
And that's a very good basketball team. I
And
said
he's
very
the
good like
reason.
15 times there.
Right, and he's the reason that things really ended up spiraling out of control
Yep.
for Chicago. It was him that strung together, I believe it was, 8 straight points at one point there or late in the third. He was the one that really got the ball rolling for OKC and pushed things over the top. But at the same time, Chicago, it's like they thrust themselves down that hill first because there was just, and we'll get into it. We're going to talk about it a little bit, but there were definitely some concerning things that we saw. And but hey, it's open. That's game one of 82. And so I think what we want to do on this show, the way we want to approach this first is the game here, is we want to do a good and a bad, right? So I think one of us will take a good, one of us will take a bad, and we're just gonna flip flop, just so we don't go too crazy, to go too pessimistic, even though there's a lot to be
Yeah.
pessimistic about.
But
We're trying,
it's night one. We cannot be too
yeah,
pessimistic from night one.
right. But before we do that, because I think we want to do before we get into that, because I think those are going to be more about what we actually saw on the court and more about the game. I want to quickly, Matt, we need to discuss what happened after the game. I think that needs to be the first, the first tidbit here on this show is not only did the Bulls lose in embarrassing fashion, not only do they, end the game getting blown out at home, whatever adjective you want to use to describe how the
Hmm.
vibes were on the court at the end of the game. Somehow they managed to get worse after the game, just because reports start coming out from it was Casey Johnson, Will Gottlieb, Julia
Everyone,
Poe,
all of them.
everybody that covers the team, because they're in the same press conference where Billy Donovan said, "I walked into the locker room." I'm paraphrasing, of course. This is not a direct quote. He walks into the locker room and he sees a heated confrontation between the players. He asks if they need some time. They say yes. So, we want some time, coach. He walks out, gives them a few minutes, goes back in. Still, that is for some have not wanted to describe it exactly this way, but that is a players only meeting to an extent. Maybe it wasn't called in advance. However, that is what you can describe as a players only meeting. They asked the coach to leave so we can have a discussion. They had that discussion. It was apparently a relatively heated discussion.
You know what
And
it sounds like to me, kind of, and I'm not sure how
no, go.
much.
Yeah.
Not to cross over sports here, but after the and I want to be careful because I don't want to try and say the Chicago Bulls have earned the benefit of the doubt as much as the Philadelphia Eagles have in the NFL, who are right now maybe outside of the Chiefs, the class franchise of the NFL. But like when the Eagles lost to the Jets 2 weeks ago in a rough game, and Zach Wilson beat them, and they didn't play well, they didn't play awful, but Nick Sirianni went into the locker room afterwards, and he didn't even have to talk to the team because the veterans were. It's not like Yes, which was the players talking, but I didn't really call it or think of it much as a players only meeting. It was more of just players saying what they thought needed to be said after a
Well,
game.
yes,
And
and I
with
want to,
Billy,
yeah,
like Billy's the one that told the press about it. Like if Billy thought it was a problem or a bad thing, I don't think he lets the press know about it. Now maybe they find out about it at some point, maybe a player tells them afterwards, but I don't think that's something that if Billy Donovan thought it was a bad thing or something was unproductive or something wasn't normal, I don't think that's something he just volunteers um, to the press, to the media, just gives them right away. So that's kind of where I'm at. Like it's not a good thing to be having this already, but also like it's nice to see them at least taking accountability.
sure. Yeah, well, I think that so I view it two ways. And I've been going back and forth since last night, since I wrote the article on Bleacher Nation last night, just sharing what was coming out in real time. I've gone back and forth with my thoughts. On one hand, I agree with, kind of what you just said at the end there. I'm like, look, it wasn't a traditional players only meeting as it's kind of being pushed
Yeah.
publicly. It was more of, yeah, players are going to talk after the game, right? You're going to go in the locker room, the players are talking about the game. That's what happens. That's just how it works. And oftentimes, I'm sure those conversations get a little bit heated because everyone's a competitor and that's just how it goes. So I think from that standpoint, it was them talking about a bad loss and they were probably embarrassed. They come out for the season opener and they want to play better. And, they want to make sure that they're getting their message across. And a lot of it seemed to be about the offensive identity and how, they don't want to be the same old Bulls from last year. They want to be able to change the offense. And at the end of the day, I think you need to have open conversation to be able to be a good team, to
Hmm.
be a better team. And that's what Billy Donovan preached in his press conference. And that's why he told the media about it. He said, look, this is, again, paraphrasing, this is a situation where they are communicating amongst themselves. This wouldn't have happened last year ever, is what he said. This wouldn't have happened last year. The team last year was quiet. Torrey Craig said this once he joined the team. It was one of the more quiet teams that he joined off the bat. So there was a lack of communication between this team. So from that standpoint, yes, it can be a positive when you said, okay, they're finally confronting and they're doing it from the jump, which means they have to care about this. They have to be taking it seriously if they go in the locker room and they're, immediately willing to call each other out and have that tough conversation. And then today at practice, the players are talking about it with the media after practice, and they're also downplaying it, of course, and they're going to do that naturally. But they're saying no, it's a conversation that needed to be had, and Vucevic in particular seemed to be pushing this forward and saying, we need to stick to the offense we're trying to do. We need to keep the ball moving. That didn't happen late in the game, so
It
that's
did. I
one
mean, you look.
side.
I was looking at you look at the numbers. Vooch, I think had 11 points last night. 6 of them came in the first half, but it came on. I think it was 3 of 6 shooting. Whereas the second half, he only had 5 points and he was 2 of 2. Like
Right, and I think
Vooch has
that's
been vocal since he signed the contract that like we need to run this new. Like we need to develop the offense. We need to change it up. And we said it's not that he wants to be Nikola Jokic, but he sees what that offense does in Denver and thinks that they need to kind of run things through the middle a little bit more because they have the personnel to do that. And it seemed like they were doing it for a little bit in the first half, and things are going well. Um, Kobe White started slow, didn't have a great first quarter, but it seemed like they were kind of doing that a little bit. And then, yes, late third quarter, fourth quarter just became last year's same old Bulls of stagnant,
Yeah,
heaving
to an
shots
extent,
up.
yeah,
And
and I definitely think he's got a point. There's some validity there, and when we go through more of the game with the good, the bad, I think there's stuff to get in about the type of game he played and the type of game that he could have had. But I think on the other end of the locker room thing, so on that one side where it's like, hey, maybe this is a good thing. The other end is just for obvious reasons, hey, maybe this is a bad thing. It's game one. Should you have to be telling your coach, leave the room so we can have this discussion? Billy Donovan should be a part of those discussions. I'm sure he was afterwards, whatever, but still, it's just, this isn't the message you want to send because then you go and you look, throughout the national media today, what's happening? They're talking about this because
mhm.
it's a ridiculous, easy headline of, hey, the Bulls had a players only meeting after one game. And they're laughing about it. And then and I'm sure there's some things the Bulls are covering up with this and maybe how
Yeah,
passionate it was and all that stuff. Because while on one end it might not be a big deal, on the other end it did happen. The Athletic Shams Charania are on FanDuel TV today. He was when talking about a DeMar DeRozan extension and how the two sides are far apart, and that's a whole other thing we could talk about. He said that last night's discussion was heated. They were talking specifically, it was Vucevic led it and talked specifically about the offense and how they weren't passing enough, and how they still need to, kind of a true point guard and whatever. And so it's there. While there could be positives out of this, and while I'm sure maybe one of these isn't that bad, this isn't the way that they should want to address everything, and this isn't the way that you should be probably addressing things on night one of the season. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a bad look. That's, I guess, the best way to put
That's totally fair. It's a bad look, and I think we'll honestly probably find out tomorrow night if the meeting mattered, if it was a bad look, if it was something that worked. Like I think we'll see how the offense runs on Friday night in Toronto, at home against Toronto.
I will say,
in another tough matchup, tough defensive team. Like, all right, like we had this blow up or whatever you want to call it. Now are we going to be all talk and just kind of keep doing this? Because like one of these, like you said, one of these can be good, but when you get to the point where you have these all the time, and then nothing happens, nothing changes from them, and you have to keep having them, they start to lose their impact and they don't mean anything. So if they actually use that last night and like build off it and the offense does look better, great. But there's a lot of pressure on Friday night to like actually look better.
Yeah, well, I think too, we saw this happen last year. Remember the Minnesota Timberwolves game where the Bulls gave up 150 points,
Oh
and
yeah, that was
afterwards,
hilarious.
everyone apparently gained up on Zach LaVine in the locker room, and there was just words said and whatever. So that was kind of your another locker room confrontation, if you will, a little bit. I mean, that one definitely seemed a little different from this one. This one definitely sounds right off the bat like it could just be more constructive, but the Bulls did respond well to that meeting in Minnesota. They technically had a better second half of the season. LaVine seemingly responded pretty well to it because his second half of the season in particular was really strong. So yes, it's possible that this is just, it's dysfunctional a little bit. Yeah. But at the same time, maybe it is what the team needs. And it is just indicative of more communication for this team this year. And they are serious about getting this thing on track. Maybe that is true. And like you said, I think tomorrow, Saturday against the Pistons, we'll have an idea of, how this impacted the team. All right. With that said, let's do a good bad. I think, Matt, I'm going to offer you the table here, and you can start. You can pick a good or a bad, whatever you want, and you can start it off, and then I'll pick whatever the opposite is to go with. So you start this off, pick a good or a bad from last night's game.
I'll start with a good, and I think there's a pretty obvious bad to bounce off what I'm going to say was good.
Okay.
But the good is they shot 42 3-pointers last night. Last year, I believe they were dead last in 3-point attempts, and it was something they kind of refused to do unless it was Zach LaVine.
2 straight seasons.
They did make a concerted effort to shoot more threes last night, and that is something that, while maybe what you're going to say was bad next was bad, it's not going to be that bad all year. Zach LaVine isn't going to be 2 of 9 from 3 every night. Kobe White's not going to be 2 of 7 from 3 every night. Patrick Williams isn't going to be 0 for 4 from 3 every night. Vooch isn't going to be 0 for 2 every night. I mean, I'm literally listing everybody on their team, not named Torrey Craig, had a bad night shooting from 3. Keep putting those shots up. We do have guys that can shoot the basketball, and they're not all going to have bad nights at the same time again, because it's not like a lot of those were heavily contested bad shots. They had some good looks at 3, and they just weren't falling last night. But that is a positive step. They took 42 3-pointers last night. While, again, the execution might not have been there, the intent was, and I think that's something that will come along if they keep getting those looks.
Well, yeah, I will comment on the good first before I deliver a bad. Which, yes, you gave me a softball.
You can take the other side of the box.
You gave me a softball.
The other side of the column that's the bad.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. This is a good. If we have to pick something out from this game, which there are other things too. We'll list other goods. There are actually, it's in the moment. It's hard, right? Because you're watching the team crumble again. You're watching a similar outcome to last year. The Thunder in particular last year killed them, and it happened again this year. With that said, it's game 1, and yeah, there were some positives, and I think the amount of 3-point shots was overall a positive. The 42 that they took matched their season high from last year. So right off the bat, they have the effort to take more, and I became concerned during the regular season about whether or not that would still, or during the preseason, I should say, about whether or not that would still be an emphasis, because we saw them after game 1 in the preseason against Milwaukee chuck up quite a few. They took their foot off the gas again and were passing up some open shots over the next few games. And, definitely were looking similar to the team we saw a couple years ago in terms of their shot profile. So I think in the preseason, I wrote this yesterday at Bleacher Nation. I picked 3 stats out that the team in the preseason were wanted to fix and did or did not. One of them that they did not was this 3-point situation. They were still dead last or no, I believe they were 29th. I can pull up the article and check, but either 29th or 30th in 3-point attempts per game in the preseason. So you started to get concerned, like, okay, if there's any time where you're going to lean too heavily in one direction and shoot too many threes, I think it would be the preseason, just to get in the habit of doing it. So the fact that they didn't was concerning. And then in this game, they come out, they shoot 42. And like you said, while they didn't have great success doing so, it was at least a little more representative of the type of offense they should want to have. And I should say a lot of these were open threes. I mean, I don't have
They
it.
weren't super contested double cover. Like Zach had good looks last night. He
Yeah,
just
they weren't
wasn't
just
hitting.
doing it to do it. And honestly,
Mhm.
and I think Billy Donovan had said this after the game, they were some they passed up. They could have taken even more. Not to say you should be taking more than 42, or this team in particular, but there were some, especially Vucevic, I think about. He only took 2 threes, and he's somebody that obviously was expressing his frustration with the
Mhm.
offense after the game. There's frustrations to have with Vooch in this game because
Yeah.
there were
Sure, he
2
was probably a little frustrated with himself too. Booch.
yeah, there were a couple threes that he passed up that seemed like he was wide open and should have taken them, and so there were a couple other shots that just they didn't hoist up, and I think the only 2 guys too, funny enough, that looked solid from 3 really were Javon Carter and Torrey Craig, and Carter, he ended up only 1 for 4, but the way that those 2 started the game, their
Mhm.
their first 4 shots combined were all threes, and they were 3 of 4 from downtown. So it was funny to see, hey, we signed these guys because they're adequate 3-point shooters. What happens? Right away, they come out and they're taking threes. So that's another positive is just, okay, our 2 new guys, they did come in and they were, emphasizing, I'm going to take these right off the bat. So agreed, Matt. It's a good that they took the threes because this is a numbers game in the NBA. They're not always going to shoot this bad. You need to take more. We learned that over the
Law
past
of
2 years.
averages.
With the bad, just because it's a softball and you teed me up and I'll just hit it. The 12, they made 12. So they made 12 of 42.
Not great.
Um,
Not great.
yeah, so 12 of 42, if you can do the quick math in your head, that's 28.6% from downtown. And then meanwhile, the Oklahoma City Thunder shot 19 of 39. So when you're looking at the disparity behind the 3-point line, even though the Bulls shot the 42 that they did, which again ties a high from last year, they still lost the battle behind the arc by 21 points. And that was the problem last year. You
And they
saw
lost
these
the game by 20.
Yeah, exactly. But that was the problem last year is you saw time and again, you could just basically pull up a box score, go to the 3-point stats and see how many more the opposing team made. And that would almost tell you the story about, why the Bulls lost because, oh, the Bulls shot 54% from the field during that game. Wow, that's great. Oh, well, they only made 8 threes and the other team made 15. Like this was happening all the time last year. So it's just the fact that it happened again is concerning. And the fact that there was always concerns about can this team shoot more threes with the personnel that they have. I think Levine is obviously someone who can. He's not going to shoot 2 and 9 every night, like you said. He will be better from downtown. I like that he took 9 threes. I don't have a problem with it. But
He
then,
should he should be taking maybe not 9 a night, but like he should be up around 6, 7 a night because he is
well, he
that
was
good of a
no,
shooter.
he averaged 7.5 last
Fair
year.
enough.
He should
He
be
should
around
be up
9.
at 8. Yeah, fair enough. 9. He should be at 9 a night because he's a good shooter, and 2 of 9 is not going to be the norm for him. I'm not saying he's going to go 6 or 7 of 9 every night, but he's a guy that if he's taking 9 a night, he's probably going to end up making 4.
Right. And so, yes, when you go down the list here and you look and you see, like you said, Kobe White 2 of 7, that should normally be better.
One of
Patrick
which was from
Williams,
like the volleyball line.
right? Well, one of his makes was
Yeah,
from
that's what one
yeah,
of the makes from there.
but that's also a little bit of a concern with Kobe. He's always been a little streaky. So you want to see a little more consistency from him. But still, okay, first night he's not going to shoot that bad normally. And then Patrick Williams 0-4. What he's shown the first 2 years at least is he's not normally going to shoot that bad. So yeah, there's room here where you go, okay, well they're not always going to shoot that bad, but it does come down to, and I've only done my one rewatch of the game, so I have to do more sadly. But the way they were getting the shots weren't the worst, but there's definitely some where Levine took some ugly contested ones, and Alex Caruso taking 4. some might say good. I want to see him doing it, but like he's been extremely inconsistent throughout his career behind the arc. So, I don't have high expectations. And there was one specifically in the third quarter where the game was getting out of hand. And we saw them. This was during a 10-0 run for OKC. It was after Vooch got the technical. And that's when things really fell off. Vooch got a tee because he was frustrated, even though the score was 79-78. So that was weird. And then Alex Caruso, 3 possessions later, gets a wide open 3 in the corner in transition, and he just can't hit it. There was another corner 3, I believe he tried to hit that quarter and missed it. So he's just somebody that he needs to be, I guess, more careful about what he's shooting. You would want high percentage looks like corner threes if you're going to have a guy like him shooting them, but he just didn't knock them down. So overall, there's just concerns moving forward about, they can shoot more threes all they want, but are they going to be able to make them? Obviously, is going to be the big question. So, not great. All right, Matt. What's next? You want another good or bad?
I can do either. What do you want me to do? You want me to take a bad or a good?
Take a bad.
Vooch having 2 shots in the second half. I don't think that's. I know the Bulls have a lot of shooters. I know Levine is a shooter. I know DeMar likes to shoot, but like Vooch needs to be more involved. He said he wants to be more involved. He passed up on some threes, yes, but it just seemed like he kind of stopped getting the ball in the middle. And I think he had a pretty decent first half. He had a matchup advantage against Chet Holmgren, who's a good player, but as we talked about, he was yesterday, more so like veteran in the paint against a rookie playing his first NBA game. I think they should have exploited that a little bit more. And I know we're trying to hit more threes, but if you have Vooch playing well in the post, getting buckets on Chet, they're going to collapse on him more, and that's going to open things up more beyond the arc. So I think that for me is the bad. I'm not sure. It's a little bit on Vooch. It's a little bit on his teammates for not getting him the ball more often in the paint. But that for me, and especially in the second half, like when OKC's making a run, get the ball to your bucket guy in the paint, let him go to work on a rookie and see if he can get you some buckets.
Yeah, I agreed. Good, bad. That's a good bad.
Yeah,
I think
2 shots in the second half for him is just not acceptable.
No, and I think overall 8 in the game is not acceptable. Right?
Also not like he needs to be up around 11, 12.
Unacceptable, I should say.
Yeah.
It's he can't be getting 8 shots in a game specifically like this. And I'm having a hard time a little bit with Vucevic after this game, just because I do think he's sounding a little bit I don't know. I want to be nice. I don't want to say the word like petty, right? But it's not like when he's the one expressing these frustrations about the offense and everything, it sounds like he does kind of he's like, where's my touches? I need more touches, like whatever. And so in some ways it's kind of like, what do you want exactly? Do you just want these post-up opportunities? Because that's not what the offense is trying to do. But to give him the benefit of the doubt, it seems like he just wants the touches so he can help initiate offense and create offense. And, to his credit, there were multiple times during this game where the Bulls were just not able to get the ball inside to him. And that goes back to not having a true point guard. They can't make those interior passes very easily. Those over the top, of a defender passes where Vooch can just grab it with one hand and go up strong for a layup. You're absolutely right too. Last night, he had the advantage. We talked about it in the preview show. Chet Holmgren, as talented as he is, as great as he's going to be as an NBA player, likely, we saw Vooch in the first quarter basically put him on a poster because he got the ball in the post, backed him down, and just easily exploded up towards the rim and dunked it. And Andre Drummond broke Chet Holmgren's ankles. Like last night was, and then their other, center that OKC was using is a sophomore who, another guy who doesn't have a ton of meat on his bones. So this was a clear game where you had not only the mental advantage inside with somebody like Vucevic, but the more physical advantage. He could just back down a guy like Chet. He did it a couple times, and he made it look easy. There was that one little hook shot he had in the third quarter where the Bulls cut it to 79-78 a few possessions before he got that technical and things really fell off, where he just backed down Chet, went up for the easy hook shot. And so there were just times where you go, you should be playing inside out more in a game like this. I'm not sitting here and saying this should always be the motive, because that slows you down. It's not as up tempo. But
you got to adjust to your opponent.
Yeah, but you have
to think any sport. You got to attack their weakness. Which again, I don't want to sound like you keep being critical of Chet Holmgren. I think he's a very good player, but just in this certain situation with a rookie on it, again, his first game against a veteran like Vooch who's talented in the post.
Well, and two, I think another example of when the bull or of why this could have worked better is Alex Caruso checks into the game. Again, I believe this was the third quarter because I basically rewatched it. That's what I watched multiple times in the third quarter. Alex Caruso checks into the game and he feeds it to Vucevic and inside because he has a good interior bounce pass. Uh, Vucevic draws the help defender, kicks right back out, and Caruso hits his 1-3 that he made on the
I
night.
remember that one
So
actually. Yeah.
yeah, and that was kind of that moment, especially when you're rewatching the game where you go like, oh, okay, that's why Vucevic was angry because like
That's why he wants the ball more.
yeah, where's a little bit more of that? And it's not like he wants it because he wants to go up and score. He wants it so he can help create some of those kick out opportunities. So you can't do that every possession. I get it. That's why I'm conflicted because I'm like on one hand, look, the game is what it is. You can't just always play through the big man. But in a game like last night, there's no question that they needed to do it more. You can't just have 8 shots. Okay.
So leave you with a good?
That leaves me with a good. For a good, I'm gonna go with oof.
There's a couple
there's less
left.
goods than bad. No, I know. I think can I go with let's
This is
go
your
with
podcast. You can go with wherever you want.
I'm gonna go with Torrey Craig.
That's a good one. That's a good.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Torrey Craig, and then I'll sprinkle in a little Javon Carter. Now, if you look at the plus minus, I don't recommend it for either player. This doesn't feel like a good, but that's also not a stat that you can always use to justify everything.
It's like Patrick Kane's plus minus in the NHL is always super negative, but like he's really good and you want him on your team.
Yeah. So with Torrey Craig, I think what you hoped he would bring to the table, he brought immediately. We saw it during the preseason. Same thing last night. When things became stagnant in the second half there, as those wheels started to fall off, Craig was still the one playing the same way he always plays. He was the one cutting towards the rim a couple times. He was the one trying to get 4 offensive rebounds. And that was another positive, another good that I don't know if this was on one of our lists, but I'm just going to lump it in here because it has to do with Craig. Another good would have been the fact that the Bulls won the offensive rebounding department. And that was one of the positive strides they did show in the preseason. They improved from being the worst offensive rebounding team in the league last year, maybe 28th, I believe they were.
There. I think it was close to last.
Yeah, it might have been like a 28th ranked offensive rebounding percentage last season. And in the preseason, they had the second highest offensive rebounding percentage. It's also going to stay high after this game because they out rebounded OKC on the offensive glass 13-5. So a big part of that, Torrey Craig. He had 4 offensive rebounds on the night, 7 total rebounds to go along with 11 points and a 3 of 4 performance from 3. So in terms of the versatile role player that you want, an elevated Javonte Green or Derrick Jones Jr. in some ways because he does give you that pressure in the rebounding department, but he's even longer. He gave you what you wanted to see. So that was definitely a good. I think more of him. He only played 21 minutes last night. Like you might just have to rely more on him because of the good things that he's doing for you. So I would say that was a positive. And then to sprinkle in the Javon Carter, he was only 1 of 4 from the night. He only played 15 minutes. But again, I think we saw a little bit of a glimpse there of what he's supposed to bring this team in terms of his up-tempo play as well. But yeah, he had a couple of ugly 3-pointers, but I think he's going to be better. Those 2 guys, though, they looked fine for their first go around, especially Torrey.
Yeah, I would agree. And while I push back on the people that say the Bulls did absolutely nothing this offseason. Did they do enough? No. But they did go out and add 2 bench pieces that are going to be, impactful players on this roster this year. And we did see that on night 1 last night. Torrey Craig, I thought, had a very good night. And like you said, I think you described it well with Javon Carter. It wasn't his best game, but we did see glimpses of what he's going to try to do and what he's capable of doing because we saw it against us with Milwaukee so often. But I think he's going to be the guy that, like, I know you said Caruso was missing some open transition threes or ones in the corner. Like Carter, I feel like is the guy that has hit so many of those against the Bulls over the last 2 years that I'm hoping he's kind of the guy that starts hitting them for us going forward.
Yeah, for sure. All right, that gives you have your pick of the draw. You want a good or a bad?
What do you want me to do? I'll let you pick again.
Oh wow, that's so kind of you.
Yeah.
Why don't you take I got another good teed up, so
okay.
Why don't you just take a bad? There's plenty also to choose.
I'll take a bad. I still love Kobe White, and I think he's going to be pretty good this year, and I think he's going to have a good year. But I think for as good as he was then the year last year, and as good as he was in the preseason, I think some of our fears about what he was going to look like in the first unit running the show kind of came to realization last night. I don't think he was great to start the game. He definitely lost the point guard battle too. It's okay. It's not a bad. Or I shouldn't say you shouldn't be ashamed to lose a point guard battle to Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. I think was his first team All NBA. I heard on the broadcast last night they were saying, or what it was All NBA last year. Like he's a great player, but Kobe's just got to be better. I think in all facets. I don't like he looked a little bit tentative last night. He looked like he was deferring a little bit too often as opposed to the aggressive guy that we saw towards the end of the year last year and again in the preseason. So he's just a tough matchup. It was night one. He's got to get better. He's got to learn from that one. It's like, all right, you had your bad game. He's got to be a lot better against Toronto. And I like him. I think he's going to be good this year. But I think we saw some of the things last night. They were like, we had a little bit of concern about going into the year. It's like, all right, well, those concerns are still kind of there.
Yeah, fair. I would give it. I would actually say that his performance was more of a meh to me than a bad.
That's
So
why I
I
didn't say
think
bad. Like I didn't think he was awful,
right.
but like I
No, but
didn't
it's good.
really
It's a
have
good
more
one to
like
bring up. He's at
yeah.
least a name that we have to bring up on this show. So I think that's if I had to pick a side, if I'm
If
putting
anything, that
him in
might
a good
actually
or
be a
bad.
good that his bad is only a meh for you. And like, was he
Sure.
awful last night? No,
Right.
but he definitely could have been better. And I mentioned Wednesday, like, all right, cool. I love seeing him get thrown into the fire, night one against one of the best point guards in the NBA. I'm not sure he totally passed that test. And while I didn't expect him to be the better point guard, I did expect a little bit more from him last night. So yeah, like you said, maybe not a bad, but kind of a meh. Like, all right, that could have gone
Yeah, I
better.
mean, he shot 4 of 14 from the field, which is not what you want to see. 2 of 7 from
No.
three, like we've already said. He did get to the free throw line 6 times, which I liked a lot.
That was a good part. That
Him
was
and
definitely the positive.
yeah, a positive that I have for both him and Zach is that I think both were because Zach Levine had a bad start to the game as well. What I
Zach just
liked
had a
from
bad
both of
game.
them, yeah, the big three had a horrible game.
4 of 16 is not good.
No, and I think combined they shot like 40% from the Vucevic, Tamar, and Zach combined like 40% from the field, I believe. So
Not great.
no, there's questions right there about the fit, right? But anyway, with the Kobe White thing, I like that he got to the line 6 times. I did think he had a couple of passes that kind of popped. I think that it's clear, like we've said on the show before, that he's trying to run the style of offense that Billy Donovan wants, which is why I agree with you. I think he's gonna have a good year. I think he's the right guy for it. So the fact that he was 4 of 14, still managed though to have 15 points. And 0 turnovers, by the way,
That's huge.
which is definitely a bonus for him. But yeah, it was a meh game for me because I think, like you said, we were also concerned about his matchup with Shea, and nobody ever expected Kobe to be able to go toe to toe with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. But defensively, right off the bat, I think there were just concerns there, and that's why we kind of saw. I think, well, some of it was foul trouble as well for both him and Zach, but we saw Alex Caruso and Javon Carter sent out pretty early from Billy. And instead of going the Torrey Craig first for Patrick Williams route, they ended up going, I believe, Kobe and Zach out for Alex and Javon. So I was a little worried defensively with Kobe. I don't want to criticize him too much because I would have to go back and pay specific attention to like how he was doing out there. But OKC also was 17-8 in fast break points, which that just I don't know, just a transition defense wise, that first unit didn't do a good job at all. So
Yeah.
there's definitely concerns there. Okay, I got a good. I think I got a good. Okay.
I'm sure you do. There's a couple left.
All right. Yeah, my good would be Patrick Williams. I don't know if he's definitely not a bad for me because I
He's kind
think
of a meh. He was in the same
he's another
category as
meh.
Kobe White for me.
Yeah, we're entering the meh category. That was maybe what we should have done, a good, a bad, a meh. But 4 of 10 from the field, again, not great, but I liked the shots he was trying to generate. Maybe a little too much in the mid range for me, but at the same time, he was at least like going off the dribble, saying I'm gonna try to hunt my shot. And he also had 2 offensive rebounds. It was only 3 total rebounds, but 2 of them were offensive rebounds. He had one really good one
Rebounds.
in the second half. And he also had 4 assists, which was nice, 2 steals. it sounds like I'm just reading the box score, but just giving you the stats there. What really stood out to me more than anything that was in the box score for him was just the way he was approaching the game. And I know at some point we have to stop praising Patrick Williams for an 8-point game and just, the eye test. Like the results also have to start pulling up there. But compared to the way everybody else played last night, especially the Bulls' real stars and stuff, like for me, I was at least encouraged with the way that he approached things. I thought he was aggressive from the start. The first basket of the game was a turnaround jumper from him. He had a couple of moments defensively too, where he was very engaged. I mean, that hasn't really been a concern. We know what he can do defensively, but I think and also just getting 10 shots up is good for Pat.
Yeah.
Like we shouldn't forget that. He was willing to shoot it. And I can't sit here and criticize him for that or for only shooting 40% because the entire team only shot 41.5%. So it's not like he was hurting this team by not being aggressive or missing his shots. At the end of the day, the fact that he was aggressive at least should have helped this team more. So I was meh
Mm-hmm.
by his performance and thought it was at least something to build on and a little more encouraging than some of the stuff that we saw in the preseason, which definitely raised a few red flags. Now, does that mean there shouldn't still be conversations about, hey, should Torrey Craig start over Patrick Williams? Like, the way Torrey Craig played, obviously he was like one of the best guys on the floor last night for the Bulls. So there's still those questions for me. But first game wise, I thought it was an acceptable performance from Patrick Williams.
He did a lot less floating around last night. Like last year, the main
Yeah.
concern was he just kind of going through the motions, just kind of floating. Like, I feel like Patrick Williams' performance last night was kind of like in a microcosm the Bulls' performance as a team. Like I liked a lot of the things I saw them try to do, but now it's like, all right, at some point we stop getting credit for just trying these things and we have to start executing on them. So like the wheels were turning for Williams and it looked like the effort and the intensity were there more than we wanted. I love 10 shots. Like he needs to have more games with that many, but like now we need to start making more of those. Now we need to start executing on what we're doing and not just doing it, if that makes sense.
Right. And I think last night was an example of a game. You talk about the floating around and maybe just another way to put it. But I just I didn't forget that he was out there like I did on other nights, last year.
He disappeared way too often last year.
Yeah, you were just.
And I noticed him last night in a good way.
Exactly. Yeah, I was like, okay, he's the guy's out.
But 2 offensive rebounds is nice. 3 rebounds is not enough. He needs to be a 5-6 rebound a night guy. Like
that's always the thing that's always the challenge now for him is whether or not he can do a little bit more on the glass.
Because that's where when he's having an off night shooting, that's where he can impact the box score.
Right. All right, we got one more. What did we just do? I did it good. So why don't we do one more bad? One more good, or if you just have anything left in mind that you want to throw out, that's a good or bad or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Oh, I'm up.
Yeah, you got anything? One more thing before we close this thing out.
Andre Drummond was fine last night. I thought he brought some intensity off the bench. Actually, no. Here's a better good. DeMar shot 3 threes last night, and I think that goes again with I'm happy the Bulls shot 42 3-pointers. I know DeMar DeRozan is the king in the mid-range, and he's really, really good at it. But like the 3-point line's only about 2 steps back, and he's a good shooter. I'm not saying he needs to be a guy that's putting up 7, 8, 9 threes a night, but he also can't be a guy that's putting up 0 or 1 a night. So seeing him actually be a little bit more willing to take more threes last night, hitting a 3, being 1 of 3, like good. Take 3 to 4 3-pointers a night. You're probably going to hit 1, maybe 2 of them because you're a very good shooter. So that, I guess I'm kind of grasping at straws, but like I'll take that. That's a start for DeMar because there were too many last year where it was 0 to 1.
Well, I think for me it was because I think he's not gonna be a high volume shooter. He's not gonna shoot more.
No, that's never gonna happen. He's never gonna be Zach, but like 2, 3, 4 a night. Okay, we can live with that. I can build on. Meet me in the middle.
What I think for me was I at least just liked that there was very little hesitation from him on the 3 that he took. Like he just
like last year when even to take a 3, he'd be like, okay,
he'd have to be wide open.
Take it? Yeah,
he'd have to be pretty much wide open, or it would be a buzzer beater 3. Like that was that was it. So I think
remember those 2 back-to-back that he hit in his first year. That was like back-to-back nights. That was
the good old days.
Cool.
The good old days of the big 3.
Back when we were the 1 seed.
All right, so that was a good, right? You did
Yeah, that was a
a
good.
good.
I'll take that as again. I said I'm kind of grasping at straws
Yeah.
here, but that was a good.
Okay, so I was well, I can end the show. Let's see. Do I end the show on a good or end the show on a bad? I think to stick with the tune of what the Bulls did to us, maybe I'll just end the show on a bad. And I think the bad is just not anything specifically, but just this something we kind of similar we talked about at the start of the show, just this overarching idea of continuity. It felt, this team has felt stale from the moment that they decided over the offseason that this was the path that they were going to go. And the fact that the first game of the season not only got, but like we said, came with the locker room tension, all that kind of stuff, the vibes are just bad. So I want to I first game, we have Toronto on Friday. We have the Pistons on Saturday. Those are two games the Bulls will play. We can come back to you next Monday. Hopefully they're 2-1. I
Glad
said
to.
I wrote on Bleacher Nation. I said, "Hey, if they can just start 2-1, I'm fine with that
I
because I
said the
think they
exact
were
same
gonna."
thing in my either game or weekly preview too. Just I said, give me 2-1 after 3.
Yeah, because I do think OKC is going to be a legitimately very good team, and
I
I
think
think
they
that
have. I think what team we saw last night can be a top 5 team in the West.
yeah, I mean
Like
the
they can
Bulls
be the
defense
Kings
played
of
bad, but
last year.
they still shot 54.9% and 48% from downtown, and they have the personnel to
Mhm.
have big games like that and to get it done
And
on
they
both
have the
ends.
picks to go add somebody if they need to,
Right.
because they have just everybody's draft pick ever.
So yeah, I think there's a very real possibility that in a couple of in a month even from now, we're just like, okay, that OKC loss is what it is. It doesn't look that bad. But we'll see. I think overall though, the taste in our mouths right now isn't great, and these were the concerns I think with the continuity. Adversity struck in this game, and we saw a lack of movement offensively. We saw an uncertainty on what to do. I think there was, especially at the end of the third quarter, just a lot of it wasn't a your turn, my turn like we saw last year necessarily, but it was just a feeling of being rushed, and it was okay, I got to get this shot. Like whoever gets it, just we got to get the shot in. We got to get the shot
Mhm.
in, and that's why that 10-0 run happened
Yeah, a
for
little bit of
OKC at
panic.
the end of the third. Yeah, there was definitely a sense of panic from the Bulls, and that's not supposed to happen in year three of a core, and we'll see how they respond. So
You know what they should do? The
what should
one
they
thing
do?
that can make the locker room better,
What should
especially
make
if they're in a contract dispute with DeMar and it doesn't look like they're going to bring him back.
Oh, I know what you're gonna say.
There's a guy in Philadelphia right now who doesn't want to play for the team that he's on.
And who's a point guard who can really set.
Superstar swap. Let's do it. Harden for DeRozan. Let's go. Bring James Harden here. Let's just make it a full blown circus. Let's either get really good or really bad and then blow it up after this year when it gets really bad.
They won't get really good, I can tell you that.
I know, but like they could sell themselves that. Mark Eversley would no, he would never would overlap with him in Philly, so that doesn't mean anything. But come on, let's do it. It's fun. It seems fun.
Does it seem fun?
It seems like it would be entertaining to
I guess
cover.
if I accepted the fact that I was like, look, I just want this because I want chaos, and that's what's fun for
Yeah,
me.
and like,
Then
hey, you know what the ceiling is with DeMar, and I love DeMar DeRozan. I think he's a really good player, but it also seems like he wants a max extension, and I'm not giving DeMar DeRozan a max extension, especially when we've seen what this core is not capable of.
yeah, I think we'll talk about the DeRozan. That should probably be on the docket for next week.
That'll
Because
be a Monday thing, yeah.
yeah, like we said, just to briefly touch on it, it was Sham Sharani reported today as of recording this, which is Thursday, that yeah they had conversations, or the Bulls and him are far apart on negotiations, and that DeRozan also kind of wants to see where this thing's going to go before he commits long term. And look, I can't blame him for that. That's what he should do. And I also think the Bulls should do that. Like they should wait, because you don't. Why would you? Why would you
I
lock him
love
in?
DeMar, but like he's 34 or 33, and like I don't want to give him 4 years on a max deal or whatever. Like I'm sorry, I know
Yeah,
like
he's not
that's
going to
the
get a max,
NBA, and you think,
but yeah,
but
yeah,
I know he wants big
he's going to
money,
get a lot.
and
Yeah,
he
yeah,
like he but what maybe it's not a max, but it's
and he deserves it.
way
He
more
deserves
money.
the money because of the past 2 years that he's had, I think. But it
Yeah,
doesn't.
but
He doesn't deserve it from the Bulls because of what we've seen.
the NBA does a bad job of paying players for what they've done, not what they're going to do, and that's a discussion for a different time. But
Yeah. All right. Well, that's where we're at. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. We got 82 more games of this, and we'll come back to you next week. We're going to talk about 2 more of those games, and hopefully they're a lot better than the one that we sat through last night. So,
Over under half a players only meeting over the weekend. I think the Bulls have
ooh,
one. Over under.
I think the spread should be more like over under 3.5 at this point.
They're having a
It's
post practice
their new
players only
thing.
meeting
Yeah.
where they kick Billy out of the locker room.
It's their new thing. Yeah, they're just gonna have it. They're gonna have one at Zach's house. They're gonna have one at. They're gonna make stops around the block. Yeah, I would say. I would take the over. Okay, that's all we got. We
I
will
love
be
this
back. You
team.
can read anything in the meantime at bleachernation.com, over at bleachernation.com/bulls. In particular, you will find all of my content. Matt's also got some content up there about the Bulls, and get caught up on whatever our other thoughts are that we didn't spew on this show. And like we said, Raptors Friday, Saturday will be the Pistons, and then we'll probably be back to you on Monday.
2-1 on Monday. Here's to that.
Cheers.